sound check. So this is the first time we've used this venue, and people may not project enough for you to be able to hear at the back. So after we've gone around the room, you can say, well, can that one speak up and this is big? My name is David Whip. I'm a councillor for Earby and Courts, and I chair the area committee. If I go to my left.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Walker, Assistant Director for Operational Services and Area Coordinator for West Craven Area.
Good evening. Neil Watson, I'm Pendle's Assistant Director for Planning, Building Control and Regulatory Services.
Good evening, Chris Church, one of the councillors for Barnoldswick.
Good evening, Susan Land, Councillor for Earby Close.
Good evening, David Hartley, Councillor for Earby Close.
Good evening, everybody. Sergeant Chris Evans, I'm the Neighbourhood Policing Sergeants covering all of Pendle.
Christine Pollard, Salterforth Parish Council.
Good evening, everybody. Nick Strickland, councillor for Barnoldswick.
Tom White, Councillor for Barnoldswick.
Thank you very much. Now, these guys here are trying to give me a bit of space because I've got a cold and they don't want to catch it. They would sit next to me, really, honestly, but not tonight. I just want to check if we've got the following people in the room, and these are speakers on the various planning applications. So, I've got James Sackley. James, yeah. Joe Hale.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you. Debbie Richardson, thank you. Yeah. John McIver, thank you. Graham Love.
Yes.
Graham, thank you. I'll come to you in a minute because there is a revised recommendation on that one. And then I've got Rebecca Dennis. Yeah? Thank you, Rebecca. And finally, I've got David Poole. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now for the application, it says 30 dwellings off Park Avenue. It's actually Earby Road, Salterforth. So it's a misnomer. The revised recommendation on that one is to defer it. The applicant has asked for an extension of time, and given the circumstances, it's likely that the committee would agree to defer to the next meeting. So if you still want to speak, that's fine, but if you want to save yourself the effort to do it next time, that might make more sense. Okay, excuse me, we'll get into the agenda, it says, if I get it. Just explain that, hi, do you just want to introduce yourself and then...
Yeah, I'm Heidi from Kelbrook and Sough Parish Council.
Thank you, Heidi. Just explain that the elected councillors for Pendle Council can move things and vote on things. We have got representatives from parish councils here. They can move and second things, speak to items on the agenda, but the legislation doesn't allow them to vote. So when there's any voting taking place, they don't put their hands up, not because they don't want to, but they're not allowed to. The other thing is, on speakers, we are required to, first of all, get people to give us notice, which the people who are read out have done so. Then there is a time limit on each speaker for fairness. And I just ask if there are multiple speakers on the same issue, if people don't repeat what others have already said, and then we don't spend too long on it. I've got some procedural matters to deal with first. Once we've dealt with them, we've got police and community safety issues, which will take a little bit of time, and then we'll come on to the planning applications after that. So the first item is any declaration of interest, and this is where councillors have if you've got a prejudicial pecuniary interest, they have to declare it and take no part in the meeting. Are there any? No? Okay. Item number 2 is public question time, and this is an opportunity for residents to raise issues affecting West Craven that aren't otherwise on the agenda. Could I ask, are there any residents here who want to raise any issues? No? Okay. We'll move on then to the minutes of the last meeting. Would somebody move those as a correct record, please? Move. The move seconded. Thank you. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Right, so police and community safety issues, we have Sergeant Chris Emmett here this evening. We've got some crime figures which are in front of councillors that we will run through, and we will come on to specific issues, and we'll talk about community safety issues, in other words, issues of concern that may not necessarily be crimes. So, Chris, could I just ask you if you would run through your figures?
Yeah, I'll just give you a very quick overview. So, the main priorities that I established from the last sort of meeting issues for West Craven were antisocial behaviour, mainly in the town centre of Aldernswick, but also the use of off-road illegal bikes and the emerging threat of sort of e-scooters and how they're being used in an antisocial manner on the roads. So I've done the crime figures for West Craven, and generally they do look in a good place for March. I'll just quickly run through them. So burglaries, which involves residential, commercial and non-dwelling burglaries, there was only 3 for March 2025. Comparing that to last year, that's -3, so we're in a good place there. Vehicle crime, there was only 2, so -1. Assaults for the area were down -11. Theft-related offences -3. Criminal damage and arson were just 2 up, so much of a muchness now, just slightly up. And all recorded crime for West Craven is -3, so there were 58 crime reports for West Craven for March 2025 compared to 69 in 2024, so that's generally the same, -3. All recordable crime for the year to date, for that's January, February, March, we're at 157 recorded criminal crime investigations, and the same point last year we were at 169, so that's -12. So we're in a reasonable place, but it's much of a muchness, pretty even to where we were last year. Antisocial behaviour, we're actually at +39 for antisocial behaviour, so we have seen a little bit of a spike, and obviously I'll come on to that in a little bit in the problems that we've had in Aldernswick. I've sort of dug a little bit deeper into that and looked across the board at Pendle, and we are seeing sort of a similar sort of trend in other areas, Nelson and Colne as well, for an increase in antisocial behaviour. Potential that's down to having a drier March, better weather than we did have last year, and perhaps it was a little bit wetter. Obviously, that doesn't account for all of it, but that's perhaps one of the reasons. So, I'm aware of the issues in Aldernswick Town Centre. We have implemented a patrol plan, so I've put resources in from other areas of Pendle into Aldernswick for the next 3 weeks. So hopefully you should see an increased presence in Aldernswick. The community beat manager, Gareth Ingham, unfortunately I've had a few problems with him. He's had an operation, but he's back tomorrow. We've identified some of the problem juveniles in the area and we'll be looking to impose acceptable behaviour contracts, civil orders and any kind of criminal implications. If there's a criminal offence there, we'll be trying to get them into the interview and get them through the youth offending team as well. So we're on with that. And for the last 2 weeks, we've had an operation which has been Pendle wide, but I've asked the guys to really focus on Barnoldswick. It's under the banner called Operation Nemesis, and it's predominantly a speed enforcement initiative which we've had across Pendle, but like I say, we've really tried to get Barnoldswick as a focus because I know speeding is a really big issue over here. So last night the guys were out, they did 9 check sites in Colne and 11 check sites in West Craven, so they had the speed gun out at 11 different sites in West Craven, detecting speeding motorists and imposing them with fixed penalties and summons, if you like, for speeding. So over the 2 weeks, the guys have issued 59 tolls, which are basically traffic offence reports, which are in layman's terms and fixed penalties. 17 section 59 warnings, so that's in relation to antisocial behaviour use of vehicles, so people are driving inappropriately, we can give them warnings under section 59 and then if we do it a second time we can seize the vehicle. So these warnings go onto our police national computer, and if they do the same thing again, we can actually seize the vehicle under that legislation. We've seized 4 vehicles under 165 of the Road Traffic Act, which is in relation to uninsured vehicles, which is really good. And we've given out 25 Section 172 notices, which is around requesting who's been driving that vehicle at a certain point in time. And once we have that information, we can then prosecute those drivers as well. So really positive. Like I said, I've been trying to direct the resources into Barnoldswick for those prior issues, which is really good. Just going through my list. Like I said, Gareth is back tomorrow. We have had a little bit of an unfortunate sort of run with staffing, but Gareth is back tomorrow. Hopefully we can have a little bit of sustained, settled policing now with Gareth being back. We'll continue to look to clamp down on ASB in the Barnoldswick areas, working with the schools. We've got a really good youth referral mechanism and youth panel in Pendle, and we'll try to divert them into and get them signposted into different diversionary activities, and we'll obviously really try to push and prosecute offences where they are present. So Pendle wide, Barnoldswick is one of our priorities, which we've put down, so we'll really be concentrating on the month of April as well, and we'll continue with all the enforcement that we've been doing as well.
Thank you, Chris. One of the issues that the committee's discussed at several meetings now has been scrambler lights and some of them electrical scrambler lights. I mean, that issue isn't limited to Barnoldswick. I mean, I've seen the same sort of vehicles in Earby on multiple occasions, and they seem to be ridden around with impunity. I mean, they just, pardon the phrase, but they're just sticking 2 fingers up to everybody, including the police.
Yeah.
So what effective action can there be to actually address and get a grip on that problem? And I appreciate it's not just here, because I see other communities that are suffering the same thing. And it's not a case of nuisance or antisocial behaviour, it's a case of risk to life and limb, and both for the people on the bikes, no helmets, even sort of the quads, young children sat in the front of them and adults driving them. So, how are we going to get a grip on that? Because it is an enforcement issue.
Of course it is, yeah. As part of Operation Nemesis, we've actually seized 3 of these off-road, I think there were 2 off-road bikes, scramble type bikes, and 1 e-scooter, which we've seized under no insurance legislation, which is positive. The issue with enforcement of off-road bikes is they tend to get into a sort of a pursuit situation when we get involved with them. And as you can imagine, people on off-road bikes on the roads, it certainly really quickly becomes high-risk police pursuit. So it is difficult in that respect doing that. So the way we combat it is we're relying on information from the community, and a lot of that information needs to come back from what people are wearing, where these people are going back, what's the home address, and we have got, under the section 59 legislation which I was just talking about, we have got powers that we can go in and search garage premises. As long as it's not a dwelling, we can go and search premises as well and seize that vehicle. So if we get that information, we know what address it's going back to, we can certainly go in and search and seize that vehicle. So we do rely on the information. All I'd say is if you are out and about and seeing these in the community, try to make a really detailed note of the clothing, and hopefully we can match that up with CCTV and any other footage we've got, and it just adds to the evidence picture that we can get to seize these vehicles. But yeah, it is a priority for us. It has been for the last 2 weeks for the operation, and we are looking at it. We have got some really good information. I won't say where in Barnoldswick, but I know it's a problem. It's perhaps one of the areas you're alluding to. So we've got that information. It has been searched once, but we've got some plainclothes officers targeted there now. And like I say, children are involved, which is a massive issue for us, and we really do need to prosecute that. So we are targeting it. We'll continue to target it throughout April, and hopefully we can get it sorted, because the better weather, it just becomes more prevalent as well. So we do understand it, and we are taking action against that.
Okay, well the only description I can give is black trousers, black top and a black balaclava, and 2 eyes and a mouth.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got any information, put it through. There's a multitude of ways to do that. I mean, Lancashire Talking is a really good way of doing that if you haven't been signed up today, and you can actually have that immediate two-way conversation with the community team, so you can feed that information in straight away, and it'll go straight to the community officers, which is really good as well.
Thank you. Councillor Church.
Yeah, following on from what you say about the difficulty, obviously, of pursuit.
Yeah.
If anybody sees, any of the public or any of us see any of these vehicles heading for the town or Earby, Barwick or whatever, is there anyone we can contact quickly and get the information to you quickly that some are on the way?
Yeah, I mean, I can get you the personal phone numbers if need be of the community beat managers. It will be a question whether they're on at the time. Probably more realistically, it would be 101, or in a real, if it is an emergency, i.e. life and limb or serious injury or damage to property, then 999. But it's probably the most efficient way in a live situation is to probably ring on 101. It's just having that thoughts in your head whether we can justify treating it as an emergency 999 call, if you understand what I mean.
I would never see it as an emergency, but I know there's an obvious timeline with dialing 101
yes.
or whatever. I myself, even a few days ago, was up on the top road out of Barwick. There were 3 of them together, fitting the same description exactly as David said, all in black balaclavas, etc., illegal vehicles, obviously, coming like hell the other way. Now, there was nobody I could tell. They were 5 minutes off the centre of Barnoldswick. There's one road, there's only one place you're going. If there was anybody who could be close to there, or if we could get the message to anybody soon enough to be close to there, you would not have the pursuit problem or whatever.
Yeah.
And you might be able to catch them on the spot.
Yeah, and it's not easy, is it? There's no easy answer to that. I mean, probably again, the most efficient answer would be to ring on 101. I'm quite happy to provide the mobile phone numbers of the officers. That said, the question would be, I can provide you with 5 or 10 mobile phone numbers. It's just whether that officer is on duty at the time. By the time you've run 2, you're losing interest very quickly. So again, the most efficient way would be to report it either online or 101. And again, it's just that question whether we're going to decide whether it's an emergency response. The other aspect to that is to be the best witness you possibly can. Again, be very careful about filming people like that, but CCTV, mobile phone footage is the best information that we can have. So I get what you're saying. I get it. There's no easy answer for me to give you with that, apart from 101, and I understand the frustrations that you're in 101 and you're there for 20 minutes waiting, aren't you? But I would suggest perhaps be the best witness you can, try to document everything you possibly can, anything distinguishing about the vehicle, maybe a red seat or a distinctive exhaust pipe, I don't know, anything you possibly can to help us. And if we can match that intelligence with some other pieces of intelligence from go around to that house, as long as we've got that reasonable suspicion, we will have that vehicle off.
Well, you do make the point as well, and thank you for that there is CCTV, so even if we don't get through an hour later or whatever, you will be able to backtrack and watch them. And I imagine get them to an address or an incident or whatever.
Yeah, and what I'd say, I've been having a few conversations with David, is really just give us as much information as you can. You may think sometimes, I won't bother reporting, but we need that information, we need to piece stuff together, and that's the only way we're going to combat this stuff, by getting CCTV and documenting mobile phone footage, etc. And I can assure you my team will follow it up.
Thank you. Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry you're going to get any bashing tonight, but we haven't seen you for a long while, so it's nice to see you, so thanks for coming. Just on the figures here, I noticed that Earby has the biggest rise in antisocial behaviour, at +14. And considering that it's half the size of Barwick, I would say that's twice the problem. And yet you seem to be, being from Earby, you seem to be putting all your resources into Barnoldswick, where we've got just as big, if not a bigger problem, considering the size of the town. So, with that all there, that was just my first pick-up, on that.
I mean, just can I just answer on that? I mean, Barnoldswick is the priority because of some of the logs that we've been getting through are really concerning. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, just to answer your last question, I've been away covering another role for the last 3 months, so that's why I personally have not been here. But there was some concerning logs in Barnoldswick, for example, juveniles jumping on the back of public transport and opening emergency exits, along with a number of other things. So Barnoldswick is a priority at the moment, and we're putting extra resources into Barnoldswick. The community beat manager and the PCSO are still in place, covering the whole area. So it's not to say Earby is not being policed, it will still be policed, as it would always be. All we're saying is that at this moment in time, that is one of our priorities, and we're just putting extra resources into Barnoldswick because of some of the incidents that we've been having there.
Okay, well, as an Earby, I get to see the police officer on the beat in Earby.
Okay.
So that's by and by. And the next one is, last Saturday, we did a great Tommy sleep out on the green in Earby. It was a great success.
Green in Barwick.
In Green in Barwick. There we go, is it? And it was brought just how clear it is, the problem, one with the youths, and two with the speeding. Could I suggest to your officers that they, next week, that they actually get a tent on Saturday and go and sleep on the green? Because from 12 o'clock in the morning through till 4 o'clock in the morning, it's being used as a racetrack from Gisborne Road School all the way up. Not just with cars, but with motorbikes, with scrambled bikes and everything else. And the youths that are there, which are gathering around the bus station, actually came across to talk to us. They asked us what we were doing. We actually told them we were vigilantes because there was no police present and we were ex-military, and we were there to make sure they behaved themselves. And they took that on board to start with and behaved themselves for a good while until we got bored. And then they came across again at the last bus. Just before the last bus, just to wish us luck with the night. But 90% of them weren't from Barnoldswick. We asked them where they were from. They were from Barrowford, they were from Colne, and Fallridge, and all the way round. And we said, well, why are you out in Barwick? And he said, the simple is we can get away with stuff more in Barwick because there's no police presence. And that's the answer to the 15-year-olds coming from Colne.
And what time was that, early hours?
That was the last bus going home, so that last bus, so that was around about 11 o'clock, and they've been there all night on Saturday. Again, on that corner, specifically on that corner by the bus station. So can I suggest you get your officers to get themselves camped out next Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I know you sort of say a few things in jest there, but I mean, from a community team and my community managers and PCSOs, the PCSOs don't really work past midnight. I know some of them do sort of waive their rights because the civilian staff and they do work past midnight, but generally they don't. It's not part of their shift pattern. And the latest the community beat managers work is till 2 a.m. on a weekend night as well. Although again, recently they've been waiving that to work till sort of 4 a.m. to do this nemesis, this traffic op. So what I do as a naval policing sergeant is I'm trying my best. We've only got a limited number of police officers. It is short. I don't have any influence over police numbers, unfortunately. I'm trying my best to try to get specialist operations, response, and other departments on response to come during the early hours. But as you can imagine, it's difficult. Numbers within police are sometimes, stretched, shall we say, and wherever the demand is, they get sucked into that demand, and it's unfortunately not always bottom out. So now, I get what you're saying, I get it as a priority, that's why we've put these things in place, and hopefully we'll see those increased patrols over the next coming weeks. So all I can say is I'm trying to do my best to get more patrols into the area. I get as well that we've got a few staffing issues for West Craven, but hopefully that's going to settle down in the future.
I'm finished.
Okay.
I'm finished.
Oh, sorry, Dave.
Have we got anything like Big the Banger going to be coming in? Because I've had lots of inquiries with, especially down the books clinic, around books, by the cadet call of cars just being permanently parked off-road from garages on the back of wagons and all sorts there, where the residents can't park, the army cadets can't get in to do the training or drill and things like that. So yeah, it was raised to us by a lot of concerned people just to see is that coming into.
So I'm not sure if you yourself that emailed me in the back.
Yeah, I did email you, Chris. So
I did forward it on to PC Donald Waterworth, is the PCSO who's running. It's been massively successful in the bangers, predominantly for that exact reason, for garages in Nelson abandoning their cars everywhere, that are generally uninsured, untaxed, and a blight to the community as well. So it's been really successful. And essentially, really simply, all it's been is getting the DVLA to come. They've got cameras, if you will, that detect number plates, and it'll tell you if it's not taxed. So we get all the wagons there, they all go onto the low loader and they take them off, which has been really successful. So what I did ask for is that there was a specific problem, a garage or anything like that. So if you email me privately, I can certainly get done to arrange an operation. By all means, we'll come to wherever it is. There just needs to be that demand for it as well. So I think there was one the other week where she sees up to like 20 vehicles. So, I mean, it might be that we just come in the morning, blot the target premises that you're talking about, and then we can go elsewhere. But certainly, yeah, we can bring it to West Craven. That's not a problem at all. We'd encourage it. Just one thing we are doing with that. So we do what's called problem-orientated policing. So if there's a problem like that, the guys will set up an initiative. It's about multi-agency working and partnership work. And part of that, what we're trying to get, which Lancashire don't have at the moment, is devolved powers for the police officers. So now hopefully it's going to our sort of senior management team. So hopefully now all the police officers will have a devolved power from the DVLA, so that any police officer can tax an untaxed vehicle, which you would expect we should be able to do now, but we can't, unfortunately. It's the DVLA power, so hopefully we'll get that as well. But yes, the answer is yes. If you get email me private, I'm sure you've got more details, I'll sort that out.
Don't worry about the sounding. It's the library being locked up, and the books are very valuable, and we don't want them getting stolen. David.
Thank you, yeah.
Exactly what. Susan, did you indicate? No. Anybody over here? Councillor Strickland.
I'll get my soapbox out. This is my little agenda item. First of all, welcome back. Thank you for a comprehensive update with action plans on things that you're doing. That's something I've been shouting at for 2 years, and probably tonight's probably been the most productive feedback that we've had. So thanks a lot. I'll be catching up with you over the when you're knocking around over the next couple of weeks. I've got some free time, so...
Yeah, definitely, yeah, that means and if anybody needs to speak to me, email me and I'll certainly get back to you and I'll
Thank you. The only other issue that... Sorry.
May I very briefly comment on the point about how many out-of-towners were in causing trouble? I hate to repeat myself again and again, but how many people on Facebook say there's no police in Barnoldswick? Now, I know they mean well, but they're also telling the people of Skipton, of Barrowford, of everywhere else that there's no police in Barnoldswick. This is a really great place to come along and do whatever you want. So just publicly, once again, to appeal to anybody who is inclined to do that.
And that's a problem, isn't it? We had that previously. I think we had something similar in February, and we were finding there was kids coming from Skipton and different places. So yeah, we need to get a grip on it and get it right first of all.
The final thing from me, which I've mentioned, is we've got 2 sets of contractors working in the area. Unfortunately, both in Earby and Barnoldswick, and equipment stolen, quite valuable equipment. And I think both contractors are looking for a proactive investigation by police, which the first one, I think it might have been an opportunistic, but the second one was very deliberate, where they rocked up with cutting gear and cut the protective, I can't think of the name, but cage off the front of the container to get. I'm going to have to blow my nose, I'm afraid. So these guys are doing a good job renewing our pavements, and then they're losing thousands of pounds worth of equipment, which if they could see some justice or some action from the police, they'd be grateful.
I'll chase that up. I know Gareth was looking at the CCTV for at least one of those incidents, if not both. Again, not so much West Craven, but across the board a little bit more. That's a little bit of an emerging trend of somebody approaching containers, breaking off the locks and stuff and stealing the tools within. So we've had instances with that at Sainsbury's in Colne. There's another one somewhere else the other day. So we also do have some criminals, shall we say, with that sort of MO. So that is something we're looking at as well. But I'll get Gareth to chase up those 2 that you mentioned and make sure he follows them up and gets back in touch with the contractors.
Okay. Can I thank you very much for coming along this evening? I'm afraid that we do give you grief because obviously we're concerned about our communities. I do appreciate that PCS over at Ryan has been doing some good work, but he's been on his own, and there's only so much that one person can do. So we welcome the fact that you do have a limited plan in place to get a grip, and we hope that that's successful. But I think in the fullness of time, we do need a sustained presence in order for things not to either get out of hand or continue to be out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, again, I only have a finite amount of resources across Pendle. The quota for West Craven is 1 police officer and 1 PCSO. Unfortunately, whether you agree with that, that's another matter. So they can only be there so much. Again, I'm fighting as much as I can to get other departments of resources when we aren't on duty to come into the area, but the nature of policing and demand, it generally gets sucked into major towns and bigger issues, but let's say more violent, shall we say.
Okay, I won't hark back, but I had a meeting in this building with the then divisional commander umpteen years ago, and it was all about demand-led policing. and I expressed the fear then that we would see fewer and fewer police officers as a consequence of both the location and the level of criminality in the area, and like 20, 30 years down the line, however long it might have been, you know, we'll see this on a daily basis. Let's not get onto that.
Yeah, and just very quickly, I think you're exactly right, and the nature of policing, how it's evolved, is that we have loads of sort of specialist departments and plainclothes departments, which has taken your traditional high visibility patrols off the streets, which again we think is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the way policing's gone.
Okay, thank you very much for coming along. We look forward to seeing you again in May. You or at least another representative. And if ever your inspector wants to come, he'd be very welcome as well. Thank you.
Please could I be excused?
You certainly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers. Okay, we're going to go on to planning issues now. We've got, well, at least two, perhaps three, which may be controversial. And as well as sort of time constraints, because the planning manager, Mr. Watson, he says he needs to be away by 11:30. He's got a child to pick up at an airport. But I've also got this box of tissues which is getting increasingly less tissues in it. So there's constraints all over the place. So the first plan application we've got is for the erection of 39 dwellings at land to the east of Colne Road, Earby. And this was originally submitted as part of a larger scheme. It was a bit of a hybrid, and it had an outline application in the Celtic and Sough parish, together with the full application for the bit in the township of Earby. Now, because of the size of that application, as an area committee, we commented as a consultee because at the time that application was going to go to the Development Management Committee. Subsequently, the scale of the development has been reduced, and Pendle Council scheme delegation means that because it's under the threshold to go to Development Management, the centralised committee, it's come to us. So, committee has previously expressed a view on a wider application of which this forms part, and I think all the councillors who were present at that meeting need to be clear that we have an open mind. We had a view at that point as consultees, and we will listen to what is said and take into account all the evidence that people put before us. So I'm declaring that, and all those councillors who were present at that point will also declare that they've got an open mind on the issue. So could I just check? I can't remember who was there. Councillor Strickland, are you there? So you're making the same declaration? Councillor Witt? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Hartley? Yes. Councillor Land? Yeah. Councillor Church? Right. Okay. So we have got 4 speakers, and my first speaker is James Sapley. James, if you want to come to the front, we'll hear you better. Yeah. You will, I think, be on camera. That's fine. But your profile, you know. So if you want to sit there, you've got up to 5 minutes. So whenever you're ready.
Good as James Sackley, Senior Planner and Agent for the planning application, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Dalesview Development. The application for the committee has been revised to meet both officer and technical consultee responses. Initially, the application included up to 31 homes to the south of the site. However, the scheme has been amended to remove any housing from the southern part of the land. This has demonstrated a willingness to work with the council to deliver housing at the northern part of the site. We thank the officers for their commitment to enabling amendments to be able to address any concerns, which enables the process to deliver much needed housing. This has resulted in all statutory consultees not objecting, subject to recommended conditions. This includes flood risk, ecology, highways, environmental health, archaeology and education, all not objecting to the proposal. The proposal would bring forward 39 homes featuring affordable housing and exceeding 10% biodiversity net gain, which are high quality and well designed. The layout has been carefully considered to respond to the existing pattern of development and to ensure that natural landscapes and ecology have been well accounted for. The position of the dwellings, particularly to the north of the proposed site, have been designed to ensure that the existing private amenity is maintained. Distances between the proposed dwellings and the existing housing on Brookfield Way well exceed the council's design guidelines, with over 21 metres between the rear of the existing housing and the side of the proposed new buildings. Your standard design requirements is for a distance of 12 metres to be provided. Therefore, the existing amenities are protected with no overlooking, overbearing or overshadowing impacts. As expressed in the officer's committee report, the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. Therefore, the presumption of sustainable development in favour of housing is in place, unless any adverse impacts outweigh the benefits. No adverse impacts have been identified during the course of the application by statutory consultees. Therefore, supply of 39 much-needed houses with an attractive setting would be a significant benefit to Pendle, supporting the provision of the 5-year housing land supply. Furthermore, policy LIV1 of the council's core strategy allows developments that abut the settlement boundary and support the council's 5-year housing land supply. As the site is outside the settlement boundary of Earby and abuts the settlement, this policy confirms that the principle of development is acceptable. Therefore, in conclusion, I request that the committee approve this application based on the significant benefits it would bring. I would be happy to answer any questions or clarification if required.
Thank you, James. I'll ask the committee, when all the speakers have spoken, if there are any questions from committee members. But can I thank you for keeping to time and we'll ask the speaker to come forward. So my next speaker is Joe Hale. Joe, again, if you want to come forward, we can hear you better.
And if I might just say, if you see me trembling or pause for a second or two, don't worry, I have Parkinson's, so it's quite normal for me, so don't worry about it. A few things. Before I start this, could I just make one point? The first image on the screen? Well, that one will do. I'm going to make a point in a moment. If you look down the left-hand side, you can see trees and landscape, if you like, a green buffer. And what I'm surprised about on this site is where the houses are dotted along the top, I can't understand why they didn't do a green buffer along that boundary. Because it doesn't make any sense to me to have the green buffer next to the main road, but when it comes to those houses and the amenity being protected, it isn't protected because there is no additional protection. So I'd like you to bear that in mind. Anyway, I'll move on because I've got very limited time. I'm only going to talk about a couple of points and hopefully other people will cover other areas. But I'm really interested in the visual amenity of that location and landscape. It's a very high profile green space and is very prominent in the landscape. It actually has a very high landscape value. The landscape is there, hopefully, to be protected. It benefits all who live within the area and those who pass through it. If developed, this will be lost for generations to come. Policy number ENV2 states that siting and design should be in scale and harmony with the surroundings. Now, I challenge that because the high-density housing proposed, it would be at odds with the lovely surrounding countryside. Greatly at odds. As many as possible tightly strung together houses have been squeezed into the available space with no communal green areas within the housing layout. If it were to be developed, fewer houses with spaces, better spacing on layout and open spaces would certainly suit the location better. This development would impact greatly on the landscape and the immediate environment. It would be an irreversible loss and possibly an unnecessary one. I'm going to move on to the amenity of neighbouring properties. Policy number LIV5 states that the layout and design should protect the amenity of adjoining properties, neighbouring properties. Building these properties, the ones shown, to within 1.5 to 2.5 metres of the boundary of existing houses cannot possibly be seen as protecting the amenity of those properties. This development is bound to impact on the amenity of all the existing houses in a number of ways. It cannot fail to do so. Having the gable end of a house appear at the other side of your garden fence is no small adjustment. As a minimum, it could, and it probably should, have been designed to include a meaningful buffer zone along the northern boundary to minimise that impact. And I plead with the committee that if you do pass this, then that boundary should be re-examined with a view to having a buffer zone running along it. As a minimum, it should have that. I do not think enough thought has been given to that, with all due respect to you. I don't think you've given that enough thought, and a meaningful space with trees or some landscaping or whatever would help that situation. The priority seems to be to maximise the number of buildings on the site. Water management. All new developments must consider the risk that the proposed development may pose to areas downstream. There's little confidence that the proposed management of surface water will be adequate to prevent flood risks downstream in Earby. Both the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority have found the proposals inadequate several times. On several occasions they've had to reapply to change things. Sorry. A number of times. So how can we be confident that the discharge of surface water into New Cut will not cause problems downstream in Earby? In West Craven, a very significant number of houses are currently either under construction or in the planning process. An adequate supply in the short term, I'm sure. As more suitable alternative sites become available, approving this development now may well mean the unnecessary loss of this particular lovely piece of countryside for all now and in the future. I hope the committee consider for so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, any questions from committee members?
That's fine, thank you.
The next speaker is Debbie Richardson. Again, Debbie, if you want to come forward.
Evening, everybody. My name is Debbie Richardson, and I live in Kelbrook. But I have a few objections to this proposal, having looked at it again, following the changes. My first objection is one that's been stated already, that we don't believe there's more houses required in Earby, since there are already more than 100 under construction. And the infrastructure and facilities in Earby will struggle to cope with the additional housing that's already underway, particularly the schools and medical services. As most of us know, it's almost impossible to get a GP appointment in Earby. The second objection I have is that this actually will form a ribbon development towards Kelbrook. Even though they've taken off the other housing development, it comes right up to the Kelbrook boundary, and therefore it will constitute a ribbon development. And it would have a negative effect, as has already been said, on landscape character. The mitigations for maintaining the ecosystem and diversity are unlikely to work once they've got 39 closely built houses there with lots of traffic and the tiny gardens. As the previous speaker said, this is high density housing that's been proposed for most of the site that is not in keeping with the residential area which has been cited. The few medium density ones are much more in keeping. The other information is there's no information about how many of these houses would be affordable, and this should be a key focus since we're always being told that what we need is more affordable housing. It says in the plan, in the report, that there will be a requirement for one affordable house, which we, as we know, doesn't happen. I assume with the high density housing that there would be far more affordable houses than that. It's also been stated that it's in the flood zone, which has already been discussed, which we know is an issue, and the reports from both the Flood Agency and the Environment Agency have indicated that they have reservations about this because of the flooding, and particularly the flooding downstream. And we know that over the last couple of winters it gets very, very wet in those fields and flooding to New Cut. The other concern I have is that there's insufficient off-street parking for visitors and resident vehicles, particularly in front of the apartments at the very northern end, where 4 apartments are proposed. It looks as if there are only just about enough spaces for people to park, assuming there's only one car per residential location. And you cannot assume that some residents won't have cars. Where are people supposed to park when they visit, and make sure they keep the vehicles the roads clear of vehicles when the refuse collection comes? If they had to park on the A56 and 56, this would have a significant impact on traffic flow, say nothing of the additional traffic on an already busy road, the main trunk road between areas of West Colne and North Yorkshire. And as a minor point, but a very important point, where will the residents of the apartments, which is right at the northern end of the site, put their rubbish, and who will take their bins to the refuse collection point? It looks as if they're going to have to drag bins there to users, and given there might be more senior people living in those apartments, who's going to do that? As we've both said in the past, we believe this application should be refused in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final speaker, John McKay.
So I've got a series of 5 questions, mainly concerning the flood risk. So the first part is, in the Environment Agency objection dated the 16th of August 2024, it states it is not clear if the landscaping will involve ground level raising in flood zone 3. To overcome our objection, the applicant should submit a revised flood risk assessment which addresses the points raised above. So then we have a drawing in response to that, which shows a water feature. So the question is, what will happen to the subsoil that has been excavated in order to create this water feature? Where are they going to put it if they can't raise the land? My concern is, if that land is raised, my property and my garden floods. It already has done. The second point is, in the Environment Agency response dated 18th February 2025, it states, compensatory storage shall be provided prior to any development within the design flood event flood extent. Therefore, my question is, will the council stipulate that the mitigation measures are completed prior to any hard surfaces being installed in the Earby field? The third point, in the Environment Agency response dated 18th of February, it states the measures detailed above will be retained and maintained thereafter throughout the lifetime of the development. The question is, who will police this? Who will maintain it? And if the hydraulics fail, will we see a situation like we did in 2015 where the pumping station really failed and flooded the area? Point 4, the proposed detailed site layout that was made available only 4 days ago to the public actually details the previous proposals and does not include any of the new mitigation measures. Therefore, we haven't yet seen any images of what this new proposal is. What will it look like? Will it be in keeping with the environment? Will it be attractive to the wildlife that has been displaced in the Earby field? Or will it have the appearance of a water treatment facility? And finally, point 5, are there any examples where these mitigation measures have worked before?
Okay, thank you very much, John. Now, I'm going to call Mr. Watson in, who can update the committee on the latest position of different authorities, but also respond to the points that have been made this evening. And before that, I'm just going to ask committee members if they have any questions for the applicant. Any questions for the objectors? No? Okay. Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and answer the questions of the last gentleman speaking. I missed one, so I'm trying to write, so you might have to come back to you for the fourth one, I'm afraid. But, I'll work backwards from a mitigation working. Government Select Committee looked at SUD schemes, sustainable drainage schemes, etc. As a matter of course, it is a government who wants this to happen. And it's common on virtually every residential development now in different scales and guises, etc. With hydro breaks within roads as well as swells, etc. So sustainable urban drainage systems are common. It's not. It's kind of. In fact, I can't remember the last housing scheme that didn't have some form of mitigation there. Policing it, the local authority is responsible for ensuring that conditions are complied with. There'll also be what I call Section 104 agreements with utility companies, so there's a range of factors involved in and ways of ensuring that the development complies with the conditions that are in place. Condition 22 looks at the phasing of the sustainable drainage system. So if local authorities are expected to deal with things like condition, if there's any matters that require that can be dealt with. So we are proposing a condition to say you must give a phasing plan when everything's going to be put in place, and that will ensure the mitigations there before the houses are there, etc. Where will the soil go? There are conditions, and obviously you can see in here that part of the issues that have been discussed and negotiated on for some months are about levels and about making sure that the soils are there. I haven't got an amount that is going to be shifted around exactly, but if there's too much, you'll have to go from sites. It's just a normal.
The concern is that it's already...
John, I'm sorry. If there are any questions, I can bring you back in, but I can't allow you to contribute. It could compromise the process. Neil?
Yes, Chair, there was one question that was the fourth one which I didn't possibly get to, so... Well, there are drawings and there are calculations about the mitigation measures throughout the plan, so I'm not quite sure what you were getting at there, sir, but there are plans as this shows the areas and levels, etc. There is also a condition to say final finished levels to be agreed going forward, so it's a combination of both. I hope that answers that fourth question for you. Affordable housing was mentioned. We went through a public inquiry into the local plan where the level of affordable housing was set by an inspector. That is 5%. That works out. It works out here as one unit, but there is one unit proposed within there. Got to be careful. People mention landscape character and visual amenity are different things. Landscape character is your Cotswolds, for example, the hills where will have a specific character that if it's intact will have to be preserved. That's different than a visual impact. I don't think this has got a landscape character such, but there's clearly a visual impact, and they're different, they're interrelated, but they are different things. So let's just be careful when the committee wants to go on and discuss these. Landscape character is what does the landscape look like, and this is an enclosed field with trees on the side which are self-seeded in many ways. I don't think the landscape character is actually visual. What the visual impact of this development is slightly different than something that you will debate. Being blunt, whether or not other suitable sites or not is irrelevant. The national position, local position of housing numbers are minimums, they're not maximums. There is no maximum amount of housing in any part of the country. So you can't refuse something, any council can't refuse it on alternative sites. If you do so, you'll walk into a reward of costs, I'm afraid. So suitable. And whether there's a need or not for more housing, there's a national debate about that now. Pendle's numbers have gone through the roof. We did a calculation with new figures set nationally. We're going to need about another 100 hectares of housing land, so that's the scale of new figures we're coming. We're not into that position yet, but I just wanted to give a flavour of where we were with that. Coming on to just the issue about overbearing impacts and visual impacts. Planning system doesn't protect private views, okay? So if you can see something on someone else's land, the courts are very clear, you can't preserve your own view. That's not something the planning system does. We have guidance which helps to try and articulate what is an acceptable relationship between properties. Mention was made about 21 metres between windows. That's in our guidance. There's also window to gable, that's set at 12 metres within our guidance, and that's in the council's guidance is considered to be an acceptable relationship. The distances from windows to gables are around about 13.5 metres, so slightly in excess of that. Were members to wish to refuse on those grounds, I'm not saying, I'm suggesting they do, we will be taken to our supplementary guidance that we've adopted. So you need to be clear if you're going to discuss that and you want to go against that, why you will think that that guidance would be applicable. John, the other elements really are just what the applicant said. We've gone through several months of work on altering the flood characteristics of this. It's part of the site that it's on one part, the majority is 2, and then the northeast side is in 3, but that's not being developed. Chairman, the 2, Legal Local Flood Authority and Environment Agency have indicated that they withdraw their objections because of the new information that's been put forward. Earby and Salterforth Board have just indicated that their consent may be required, not objected or supported. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. It seems to me that there are matters of principle concerning this application, and then there are matters of detail. And I mean, for instance, the issue that Mr. Hale raised in terms of the proximity of properties and the adverse impact on residential amenity, and the buffer zone that you referred to. You know, that's a detail issue, whereas the visual impact and perhaps flooding are matters of principle. So I'll kick off, if I may. There's reference made to infrastructure and the inadequacy of existing infrastructure. I think GP surgery was mentioned, and other issues could be raised as well. I'm going to ask Mr. Watson, in terms of those infrastructure, social community infrastructure requirements, what powers do we have as a planning committee to take those into account in deciding applications?
Chairman, you can always look at infrastructure. If there is clear evidence before you to say, for example, an obvious one would be the road infrastructure is not acceptable, it's overloaded, etc. And then you would say that infrastructure is not capable of taking that load. Chairman, it is evidence though, you need evidence to support the position. And I do understand that throughout the country there's pressure on doctor surgeries, etc. But the local plan also has a housing number which you haven't reached, and the providers, the NHS, schools, etc. look whether the overall quantity of housing proposed will overload that infrastructure, and if it will, then you propose new schools, etc. So I've nothing, and I understand what people are saying, but there's no evidence in front of us to say that that infrastructure is overloaded.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think the point that people make is that it's lived experience.
It is important as well for the committee to it was a point made, and not specifically, but about the 5-year supply of housing land. When you don't have a 5-year supply, and our housing supply is based on the new figure, the 333 houses per year, not the 124 which was in place before Christmas. I need to read this. Permission should be granted unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. And the demonstrably bit is, at this time of making a decision, you have to have evidence in front of you to say that whatever impacts are so significant that they, and you can demonstrate that they outweigh the impacts. That is referred to by the Supreme Court, etc., as utility balance. So it no longer is it a, okay, we think it's just adverse, therefore it's refused. It's quite a test to go through. That's why I was making the point about being able to demonstrate you have to. Lived experience, with due respect, isn't enough for the committee to make a decision.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the visual impact and the reference there, and I think that this is an issue of principle. We have got separate communities, Earby, Sough, and then Kelbrook, and between Earby and Sough there is a green, well, 2 green fields. It's not green belt, but nevertheless it is a break in the built environment, which I think is a very important zone that protects those communities merging together. So would the impact on the visual amenity, the visual impact be adverse enough, significantly and demonstrably, to outweigh the benefits of the proposed development?
Chairman, Kelbrook have its local plan, as it's never planned local, it's never planned, which looked at that kind of issue. To affect Kelbrook in itself, so you can't apply those policies directly because it's in Earby. Chairman, there are no specific policies, unlike Greenbelt, and one of the issues about Greenbelt is to stop coalescence of settlements. There's no such policy outside of Greenbelt per se. So this is more about a visual impact on its own right rather than a coalescence of settlements. Because if we went to inquiry, we would have to say what is the planning harm about settlements moving closer. We would have to articulate an argument to say what is wrong with that, apart from an ideology. There have to be a planning justification. There's no policy in place that I'm aware of. Chairman says that's bad per se. So I think it's a difficult one to argue that 2 settlements getting closer to one touch is bad. I think it's a difficult one to argue.
But not impossible.
No, but it will be, then you go into the significant demonstrable harm, which is...
And flooding, which, having been up to my, certainly up to my thighs or even worse on more occasions than I care to remember in the middle of Earby over the decades, flooding is something that is very, very much at the forefront of my mind. I am very much aware, and there's evidence on the planning portal with the pictures of the new cut spilling out onto this land on Boxing Day 2015. Now, on that occasion, of course, the flooding did impact Earby. We had 180 or so properties that were flooded. And just to correct something that I think it was John said, that the failure of the pumps caused some of the flooding. I think the evidence is that the pumps did not fail. It was the watercourses spilling out that caused the flooding. and clearly this floodplain, which is what it is, actually allowed the water to spread out before it got into the centre of Earby. Unfortunately, in that instance, that wasn't enough, and we remain very much at risk of flooding, both from New Cut and other watercourses. Now, I'm unable to judge whether the proposals that are here are adequate to address that issue of the water coming out of New Cut, and whether that would be a sufficient volume to prevent flooding downstream. But I very much fear that it will impact the downstream flooding. So could we as a committee use the downstream flood risk as a reason for refusal? Mr. Watson.
Chair, these are for non-hydrologists like myself, non-hydrologists very much rely on technical capabilities of the Environment Agency, the national body responsible in the lead local flood. And it is a technical way of looking at greenfield runoff rates, restricting flows here, not going into flood zone 3, which is the top right, the northeast section, raising the heights of the levels, but then providing compensatory areas for that flood water to go to. Chair, I'm not ducking my responsibility here, but I do rely on the Environment Agency and the legal flood to keep the technical side of it. We have reviewed this and objected on a number of occasions. Revisions have come back. I have nothing that I can put in front of the committee to say I think I'm technically incorrect in what we've done. All I can say is that they have looked at it on a number of occasions, found fault in that, fault in the way it's been done, fault in the calculations, asked the applicant to amend it, and it's come back in the form that they both now say they're happy with. Again, we go back to, we all have concern. I do appreciate that it must be horrendous for people living in the area to be flooded, but this can't make it worse. It's not here to make it better. And saying with these calculations that it will actually store the flood, it will make it slightly better. That's the emphasis. So, technical way this works is you get a storm event and the land saturates and then the water flood goes off. The suds are meant to, this is why I mentioned the select committee, store more water than the ground will naturally. So it stores more for longer. Eventually it will overflow, because anything would, but it will store more for longer and let that out at the group of runoff rate. It's meant to be a climate change benefit. And that is, is that common? It's common on virtually every development we've seen. In principle, it should help.
Thank you. I don't think my concern is necessarily about runoff rather than run on. So perhaps I could ask Mr. Sackley on behalf of the developers. Currently, as the land is profiled, if New Cut, to coin the phrase, bursts its banks and runs onto the land, how many cubic metres of water would the land contain? And with the design that we have, how many cubic metres of water coming onto the New Cut would the arrangement allow for in the future?
Thank you, Chair. just like Mr. Watson, I'm not a hydrologist either. We rely on our technical consultants to produce this information. What I would say, and in support of what Mr. Watson is saying, is it is a like-for-like kind of trade-off of ensuring that the flood risk and flood events are mitigated at least as good as it is now and better, so that you can't just have the flood go wherever you want it to go and at different levels and different proportions. It has to be a like-for-like trade-off. What I would say in relation to supporting any additional concerns is that the council, obviously in their power to restrict further, they have recommended a condition 22, which requires the developer and ourselves to support, put forward more information, even more detailed information regarding flood risk and how that's going to be mitigated. So any chinks, which there shouldn't be any, it will be exceptionally detailed at the next stage. And I believe it's written that no development will take place until that is satisfied by the local authority. So that will be another round of consultation to ensure that is ensured for future.
Okay, thank you for that. I think, well, perhaps one issue, but I'm sure somebody else on the committee will pick this up. So, in terms of the matters of principle, I've gone through my list. I'm looking at other committee members now. Councillor Hartley.
It's great to see the new plan and have a look at it with fresh eyes, so thank you. But I do want to refer to the original plan and the original consultations where otter spikes were left and found on the banks of the new cut. So otter, for people who want to know, an otter spike is basically otter poo, which are left in prominent places along riverbanks or under rocks and bridges, etc. And otters are designated the protected European protected species. They are protected under the Conservation of Habitats and a special regulation from 2017. It is a offence to kill, injure, disturb their habitats or capture them. So we thought, from the old report, we have otter spikes. Your development will highly impact on the banks of the new cut there. And even if you're trying to do it as conservatively as possible, the guys over in Gleason's are working hard to work with it on a site that's been pre-built. The other building works that went on Brookfield Close have just shown how many pile drivers need to go in order to get one stable house and the rate that they float. Now, yesterday, I was stood in the Earby Cemetery. Now, I'm a funeral director, so I'm allowed to do that quite often. But overhead came a curlew, and I saw it heading in towards Earby. And I see the curlews, and they're nesting up on Earby Moor, which is great because they are rated as a red listed species. So red listed species are birds which are under threatened on here, and we've also got lapwings and curlews, which are a red listed species, so I'd like to give you that. And they come down and they feed on this piece of land in between Sough and Earby. Yeah, and there's green as well, and there are Tony owls which are on the orange list and everything else. And so I don't just like this, but just to say, from the government level, website about planning, some wild birds listed as rare or most threatened species under Section 41 of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006 are regards for planning and conservation Section 41 species as part of your planning decision. Please make room for them in your biodiversity. So I think we've got otters, we've got rare birds that are under protection, and they use that land for feeding because it is a floodplain and they have long beaks especially designed for that soft sort of ground. What are your plans for those?
I think that is a question, so I'll let you come back in.
Absolutely. So with the application we submitted a full ecological survey where it identified otters and identified other species. So in terms of the otter specifically and how the layout has been designed, there is a buffer zone to ensure that it's not encroaching on the otter's habitat, which has been accepted by ecologists as a suitable solution. Much like Protected Birds, we have produced ecological surveys that are satisfied the local authorities.
Thank you. And do you intend to dig by hand as not to disturb their grounds?
So we're obviously producing a buffer zone. So we're not.
Are you going to dig by hand? Because machinery will disturb the otters, it will disturb the wildlife, and it will disturb everything else.
I think that was more ironic question than.
We are custodians of this land, and it should be right that we preserve this as a greenfield space for the generations to come. I want my kids to see curlews flying overhead and things like that, like I've just seen yesterday. So, anyway.
Okay.
Like you say.
Could I just check in terms of the ecological survey? What time of year was that carried out? Do you know?
So it would have been at the time. So we submitted the application in February 2024, where we submitted. I can't remember exactly, but there will be a number of. Obviously, we'll be looking at any species, any windows of when the surveys would be conducted to ensure that, back windows, for instance, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly, but they would have been accountable to ensure that any particular windows or species were accounted for.
Okay. Right. Councillor Church.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard what has been said about the change in this application in terms of keeping the two communities separate. To my mind, it's one field apart, isn't really separate. It's one community with a bit of field in the middle. That's purely a point on principle, but I do feel that.
Thank you. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Chairman. I think from the detail that I've seen for the floodings to the London Bridge, I am at a point where I'm satisfied with that proposal. I think there could be further benefits for a more naturalised in terms of biodiversity netting and the creation of those. At the moment you've just got a rectangular pond. If you naturalise that more, you'd be creating more habitat for those rare species. So, I think there could be better gain, but I'm satisfied it matches the bare minimum requirements that we've got before us, that we just say if this application is met met or not. And I don't think the balance says not at this current time. I know some residents mentioned the high density of the development. I think that's, in this instance, a positive. And I say that because if you only build low density residential around your towns, obviously every time you do that, you're not getting the maximum benefit in the number of houses, and you have to use even more land and use even more greenfields to make up those housing numbers imposed by government. And I think to use parcels of land like this with high density housing is in this case a benefit to reduce that strain on the greenfields around here and the rest of West Craven. So I feel that is an acceptable thing. In terms of sustainability, I think there's a glaring problem with this application in terms of accessibility from a design perspective. If you're living in that top loaded house there and you're thinking, why not have a walk into the centre of Earby, do my shopping, come back, you've got to walk all the way through down to the south, across, and then all the way back up, probably, 5-minute walk just to get past your house again, to then get on to the centre of Earby. Why are we doing applications like this? Why are we building like this? You should have desire lines in mind from the get-go of how people are going to get about by means other than cars. Because otherwise, if you're only looking at the road network as your accessibility, of course people are going to travel by car everywhere. And then of course you're going to get increases in traffic and you're going to get problems with parking because you're not thinking about walking as a primary means of getting about. And Earby is a town with a lot of amenity value close by. I mean, you've got this great harbour here, you've got plenty of local shops, you've got a local sectors, as hard as it is to get an appointment. And I'm just disappointed that that's the design we've come to, where the closest way to walk towards the centre of Earby is to walk away from Earby first. So I think it's a really simple solution there. You just put a footpath through the wall. I commented on the application when it first went live with that, and it's not been listened to. So I mean, I would suggest if we're allowing this tonight with the condition that there should be a pedestrian access as the crow flies towards the centre of Earby, out of that northern corner.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think we're necessarily looking at trying to improve the application. I think there are matters of principle that some of us are not satisfied with. So, if we get into the detail, there are things like the bin storage that was mentioned, the buffer zone that was mentioned between the existing houses and the proposed new development. There are issues, to my mind, with the way, if this was permitted, how is the new boundary treatment in terms of the approach into it? So, a development that's currently underway off Skipton Road in Bonoldswick, we went into quite a lot of detail trying to get the boundary right so that it was a soft edge rather than a hard edge. So I think all those issues are ones that, if we started looking at the detail, that we'd need to take into account. But I think there are fundamental principles which I am not happy with, and those are to do with that filling in of the space between Earby and Sough. I still have question marks about the flood risk downstream, which I haven't been reassured, sorry, Mr Sackley, but I haven't been reassured by what I've heard this evening, or indeed what I've seen excuse me, on the planning portal. So I would be minded that to move that on those grounds, and Mr Watson distinguished between landscape and visual impact earlier on, but you know, I think the big issue is that extension of Earby to the adjacent community, and the way in which that would erode the difference. The river development would extend that urban corridor, you know, through into Sough and then subsequently into Kelbrook. So I hear what Mr Watson says about the coalescence of settlements isn't covered in the local plan, but it is an important issue, one that we should argue to the nth degree, because otherwise what is to stop every West Craven community, and there are, you know, several distinct communities, what is to stop all those communities just becoming one large urban sprawl? And you know, if we're going to start drawing lines, then I think this is somewhere that we should draw a line. So I would put that on the table and just ask if you know, people would speak to that. So I'm suggesting refusal on the grounds. And I would take advice from Mr Watson on the precise wording, but it is that ribbon development issue, and I would also suggest the potential flood risk downstream. Excuse me. Councillor Strickland.
Yeah, I second that, support that in its entirety. Everything that everybody said and so eloquently delivered tonight, thanks for that. You just really are, I think, for me, enforcing the reason why we have to vote against this. I'm absolutely not assured that any flooding in that field will be mitigated by the plans that I've seen, the evidence that I've read. There is no substance to me that, I'm quite simple. If we have a large volume of water coming down and there's an area to catch it that is bigger than that large volume of water, I get that. What I don't get is the input that Chairman said from upstream, from the little cut breaching, from the water that runs down the main road from the other side of the railway bank. It's a massive, massive body of water that, for more times than I can remember, I've spent up to my knees in Earby trying to deal with. It comes from Kelbrook, Sough, down into Earby. And it just doesn't make sense. The more I look at the photos, and the photos that I'm looking at, I'm not taking flood conditions, they're taking just heavy rainfall. Then them fields are deep in water. Their houses into Sough are inches deep in flood water. I just don't see anything in the revised plan that would satisfy my conscience that that has been adequately dealt with. Now, if they can come back, if the client can come back with something that is simplistic for people to understand and get that confidence, then so be it. But at this moment in time, for me, I'm supporting that. I'm seconding it. I suggest my colleague do the same.
Thank you. Councillor Land.
I totally agree with this ribbon development. I didn't realise that it had to be in the local plan. It just makes total common sense to me that you do not join these communities together the way that these developments seem to be happening. There's just one extension of houses everywhere, where we used to drive through and have these lovely views as you're going along, so you feel as if you're going through countryside. It's just becoming one big development. And it really upsets me. I also agree about the green buffer. That makes common sense to me between the two estates, that there should be a distinct area. For both sides, peace of mind to me, that everything's private and not overlooked. And I support Councillor Wick's suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Watson.
Chairman, Delaware, I think there's a case to be put on the visual side. Of course, as you can also do that. I find it more difficult on the technical side of the flooding, Chairman. On that basis, the test is significantly demonstrable, and I don't think we, at this moment in time, I can point to evidence to say why it would be the veracity of that information would be arguable against. On that basis, on the flooding basis, Chairman, I think it would have to stand as a referral, because I think there was a chance of costs that we have to demonstrate.
Okay. So what Mr. Watson is saying is that we can't demonstrate the downstream flood risk issue, and I'll be quite frank. I do not have a grasp of the volumes and what's involved. So, you know, I couldn't sit here and say, well, definitely, you know, there is a worsening of the situation. So what Mr. Watson is saying that he would refer this application on that basis to the Central Development Management Committee for the Development Management Committee to determine it, to make the decision. Now, I'm more than happy. I mean, this application has been in for what, 13 months now, and I'm aware there's been a lot of toing and froing, and particularly about the flooding issue. I mean, an alternative course would be to defer it for further review of the facts and figures about flooding, and we discuss it again at the next meeting or a future meeting. I'm in committee's hands really as to what the committee think is the more sensible.
I think we're just waiting for an act of God, to be honest. You know, we're getting more and more around due to climate change, and the amount of nights we spend watching the levels on the national flood level. Twice this year, it's been within a centimetre of flooding in the centre of Earby, coming down the New Cut. And I think, yeah, it's the piece of land that is there does the job it's there to do, which is to act as a sponge and slowly release the floodplain, flood water into the cut. I can't honestly put my hand on the heart and go, yes, we should go ahead with this, because if they build it and it floods, there's no way going back. So if we don't build it and it floods, then we're all right, because it's, until it happens. So yeah, we're waiting for an act of God.
Okay. Well, the proposal on the table is to refuse it on the two grounds. I'm very conscious that we haven't covered the buffer zone immunity in that, which, if it came to further deliberation, those might be issues that will come into play. So, Mr. Watson, what's your view on that?
Chairman, buffer zoning will be there to protect a problem as an amenity issue or a design issue. We already have a housing along there, so I don't think it's a design issue, it's about the impact on neighbours. Chairman, it says in the update report we have a supplementary planning document. This complies with it, plus a little bit, not a great deal, I accept that. So our argument has to be that it's somehow our own design guidance is wrong. I think that's a really difficult argument to run.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I was encompassing within that the issue of the buffer between the open countryside, into much as would remain, and the development, as well as the buffer at the northern end of the site. So, if we were minded to refuse it, the visual impact ribbon zone, could we also incorporate the inadequacy of the design in terms of that transition from open countryside to the developed part of the region?
Jeremy, if the committee's view is that that's unacceptable, you have to, you don't get a second bite.
including the boundary wall,
Okay.
the retaining wall. Sorry. Councillor Hart.
Yeah, so I just want to go through this. The replacement of house type 403 with house type 404. Do we have a mixture of...
I think that's not an issue.
Well, it is if one's a bungalow and the other's a 3-storey house.
Chairman, it's just the windows. Sorry, it's okay. Just the windows are changing. Design's the same.
Right.
So just swapping things round. I've checked. They don't look over other properties. So
Which properties are they talking about? Which are going to be changed?
the ones at the start on there. So 4 of them. The purple ones.
Right. So which are...
Probably not at all. Purple. The ones with the red stars on them.
Okay. Right. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah. All right. Yeah. It's all right. I see them. Yeah.
Just moving.
Yeah.
Moving
Yeah.
to the side, and the second thing happening.
So, I mean, I think we'd be quite happy to approve that bit of the non-material amendment.
Yeah.
So, a split decision, approve the change of house types, the variation that, but defer a decision on the rest of it until a future meeting.
And what about the height of the fences?
Well,
from a half-metre to a 6-foot fence.
Well, that's what we're deferring.
Yeah.
So as part of the original application, we had a boundary treatment plan. What that showed as the boundary treatments dividing each of the plots was a 0.6 post and wire fence. That is proposed to be replaced with a 1.8 metre timber fence. So the same fencing used elsewhere throughout the site and around the edges of the site to replace the post and wire fence.
Mainly the back of these.
Okay.
Right. Another question for you. Well, at the back of the fence, because I actually look onto the back onto the site, the back of the featherboard fence, which is very nice, and also would like to thank you for painting the toilets in the community centre on Linden Road. It's great publicly that the police have been down and painted the toilets down.
Put that title in as well.
Well, what is your intention with the sandbags on the opposite side down to the little cup? Are they going to be left as the sandbags, or are they going to be landscaped?
I'm not sure on the detail. I mean, that isn't part of the...
No, well, that is the question why you're here, as a business representative.
Okay. Right. So what we're proposing is a split decision, approve the 403 to 404 and defer decision on the boundary treatment to include consideration of the retaining wall as well.
I think it's just a question of the changes in the fences for the internal conditions of the plots.
Yeah, I think that's deferred as well. Yeah.
I think we can actually issue half a decision on where we know. No, I think just at least we know I'm probably with this. And we'll have the discussion and bring it back. Because if we approve one, I have to refuse the other bit. I can't approve and then wait and then approve something else. I just don't think it's possible.
So you build them at risk because we might.
Well, actually, potentially what we could do is drop the proposed footpath link from the edge of highway to the boundary and just keep it as
Well,
turf.
you could.
That's what we could.
You could.
But
You could. But I don't know why you can't cooperate with what we you know, what we said originally, what we said when it came back to committee, and actually deliver the committee's wishes. So we'll just defer the whole lot then. Yeah?
Thank you.
you. Are we agreed on that then? Yeah, thank you. Next one. David Coo, where are you? Right. Now on this one, the backstory is that there was a previous application that was rejected, and this is a resubmission. The agent contacted me because the case officer was suggesting that the recommendation under the delegation would be to refuse, and the recommendation now is to approve. So this one's pushing against an open door, as long as colleagues are the same mind as I am. Talk us out of it, David.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee, I stand before you today to support the application for a single-storey living accommodation annex at Skipton Road, Earby. The proposed annex is to allow elderly parents with mobility issues to live beside their family home where their son will live. This application has undergone significant revision to directly address the concerns raised in its previous refusal, particularly regarding highway safety, as this was the sole reason for the previous refusal. The applicant has taken these concerns seriously and has worked diligently to implement key improvements, all of which contribute to a safer and more accessible site. Firstly, regarding the southern view when exiting the site, looking towards Earby, a small wall has been lowered, improving visibility for drivers and pedestrians alike. The hedge has been partially removed, with dead trees removed from the hedge, further enhancing clear sightlines needed for safe access and egress. Secondly, in terms of the northern view when exiting the site, looking towards the punch bowl, all trees that previously obstructed visibility on the applicant's land have been removed and replanted behind the visibility display within the local owner's property. This ensures that drivers have an unobstructed view when joining Skipton Road. Additionally, improvements will also be made to the access road which has been proposed. The entrance has been widened to accommodate two-way traffic, significantly improving traffic flow and reducing the likelihood of vehicles waiting in the road while turning onto the site. These changes directly address the planning officer's previous concerns and have been noted in the latest highway comments as effective improvements to road safety. It is also important to note that despite concerns previously raised about potential risks, there have been no recorded accidents at this location in the past 5 years. Highways have reviewed the revised application and raised no objection to the proposal. Moreover, this is crucial to emphasise that the proposal is for an annex and not a separate dwelling. The annex is intended to provide accommodation in direct association with the existing property and does not constitute a separate and independent residence. This distinction is key in understanding the nature of the development and its intended impact. The application is also now supported by the planning officer with a recommendation to approve. In light of the substantial improvements made to the site's highway safety measures, the absence of objections from highways and the clear distinction that this is an annex rather than a new standalone dwelling, I respectfully urge the committee to grant approval for this application. The applicant has gone above and beyond to address previous concerns and I see no justifiable reason to refuse the proposal once again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have no hesitation in moving approval. I did visit and witness myself the work that's been done. Councillor Whip?
Yeah, can I just thank the applicant for sticking with it on this. I mean, this is exactly the type of development that I think we should be seeing more of. I think it's good, efficient use of, the urban landscape to infill and densify and provide housing close to the existing community for all people to live in. And
But moved and seconded that we approve this. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Gary. Right, so we've been on planning. We've been going for an hour and 3/4. We've got one referred to development management. We've got two deferred, and we've managed to approve a little annex. And time marches on, and that airport is bearing down on us. Okay. Item 5B is planning appeals. Can we note that, please? Yeah. Item 6 is enforcement action, where we have the Royal Story offices. Case is being prepared for prosecution, and the land junction with Bloomfield Lane, which is a sad and sorry story. Can I just ask on number 4, Neil, where there was court action on 2 different issues to do with that development. It says no separate penalty. So in other words, the penalty in the first box is spread over 2. Anything further on there? Nope. I'll note that. Thank you. Item 7, Area Committee Budget. I had intended that we'd have a full sort of discussion on this here, but given it's gone 9 o'clock, I'll pass on that at the moment. However, the issue that is the subject of a proposal from our engineering section has arisen because of the public meeting that there was in Kelbrook about Earby Memorial Park. And there's a section of beckside wall that has washed away and needs to be rebuilt. Now, this is an issue for both Earby Town Council and Sough Parish Council, and there is a possibility of bidding for some Environment Agency funding in order to help get this work carried out. But we would need to put some match funding in, and the proposal is that we agree to earmark or approve the £5,000 that's bid for in order to release the first funding from the Environment Agency, hopefully to get the work done in short order. So my suggestion is that we use the already earmarked funding for Earby Memorial Park from the Earby allocation in order to facilitate that. Yeah, you're moving that?
Yes,
Okay, moving and seconded? Yeah. Lovely, thank you very much. Agreed? Yeah. Thank you. Item 8, proposed maintenance work for Earby Memorial Park. Mentioned the public meeting that we had, and just before that, as council is aware, there was agreement from Pendle Council at the centre at the budget meeting to put 12 grand into the maintenance, which is a bit of a stopgap, and it may not be sustainable, but given the agreement as I understand it from Colne Road Parish Council to tip in as well, we can make it do this year. In addition to that, at the budget meeting there were 2 further funds that were agreed. One is for grassroots sports clubs, and the other one is for assets that could be transferred to parish or town councils. And my suggestion would be that insofar as the grassroots clubs, that we point Calvert Phoenix at that funding, because they might be able to apply to get the...
We can't access that because of the leaks on the one.
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. This is funding from Pendle Council, and it could possibly pay for drainage works. The second bit of this is the asset transfers. Now, if Calvert and Sough Parish Council were minded to take on that bit of the park in their parish, it possibly could be the case that we could get funding for, say, the toilets to get sorted out. So if we draw the attention of Calvert Phoenix to the grassroots sports, and we draw the attention of the parish council to the asset transfer fund, it may be we can get a couple of jobs, significant jobs, sorted out. So that's my suggestion. Sorry, I'm sniffing. I'm going to get all my tissues out of my pocket and start reusing them. Oh no, I've got these with me. Oh, these are quality. So, are members agreeable to that course of action?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah? All in favour? Thank you very much. Premises Improvement Grant Scheme. You'll see that in the finances we have just over £11,000 that is being carried forward for premises improvement grants. I'm not clear what these figures are covering. So it's recommended in recommendation 2 that the 6,000 and 3,000, is that fresh money, or is that the money that we've already got? Because if it's fresh money, there ain't enough money in the yearly allocation to do anything, because we're spending it all on Earby Memorial Park. Can anybody tell me? It says in paragraph 3 under Barnoldswick, it says a funding allocation of 6,000 would now support to given 3 applicants in 2025-26. So I think this is new money, and I think we should defer it just to see where we're going with it.
I'm not sure it is.
Well, I mean, we might have other priorities, and as far as it is concerned, I've just pointed at Earby Town Council and said, well, we're spending all the money on park because Earby Town Council will fund it. Go to Earby Town Council and get 6 grand, 5 grand, 3 grand, whatever it is. But let's just check as facts. Yeah?
Yeah. What's the nomination?
Oh, well, I'll volunteer. I think, Chris, you did the Barney candidate, didn't you? The premises improvement grants, were you one of the council's previously? Who looked at them? You can't remember? No.
They come around that sort of red.
Okay. No, we're not going to, sorry, we'll think about it. My brain's that now, sorry. The next one, installation of a flagpole in Salterforth. Christine's shaking her head.
Don't want it.
You don't want it, whereas we want it.
Actually, you're allowed to use that one there.
We can use that money however we like.
Well, basically, two people who want it putting on from a Remembrance Day for a flag to go at half-mast.
Yeah, but you could fly it all year round.
And who's going to maintain it?
Well,
That was my question.
The West Craven Area Committee maintains the flagpole at the Earby bus station. They take great pride in not just flying the Union Jack throughout the year, but the Armed Forces Days and Navy Days and things like that. And they have a little service with maybe a couple of people turning up from the town, representatives from the Town Council turning up, and it does get used, the Earby bus.
The British Legion bring a flag on, and
It's not British Legion, it's the
I
veterans.
just say we do a lot on that day. We put on a damn good show.
Oh, you did, yeah, Salterforth was great this year, but what I'm saying is throughout the year, you've got the Navy Day, Armed Forces Day, Army Day, and things throughout the year, the Day Remembrance and things like that. They raise the flag at Earby, and that's down to the West Craven Military Veterans.
Can I suggest to make progress now that we ask our engineering section how much it would be for a flag? Not a flagpole. Yeah? And then we can talk about it with knowledge rather than, should we have a flagpole and then you get a price and it's £5 grand, so we've got one anyway. Susan?
Well, I was going to say that it says to consider whether it would like a report to come to a future meeting, and that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, that's the form of words. Yes.
Yes, because that's not telling us anything.
Okay. But if Earby is getting its flags, not flagpole.
Flags change on
Yes.
regular basis.
So are they provided by Earby Town Council? Because if Earby Town Council providing flags, they'll run one up. Because they don't know what else. Sorry. Do we have sound on, Tom?
Yeah.
We do? Okay.
Oh, I'm using camera microphone for that. It's not great, but it's not.
It's not terrible. There you go. So that's me having another dig at it. I do apologise, but no, not really. Because I think you're letting people down in here, and that's a shame.
And Yorkshire Day and Lancashire Day and things like that, so they have a vast range.
Yorkshire Day. Yorkshire Day.
Yorkshire Day.
Right, come on.
Without going into Flaggate, whatever cost of the pole.
Yeah, that's it.
Needs to be killed over 6 years ago. It's not cheap.
Just for information with this goes to Barnet Town Council, bought all of the flags at the two different sizes for both of our flagpoles in high quality material. And it's a prideful aspect that we do that.
It is an issue. Yeah. Volunteers. Christine, subject to consideration by the Northolme Town Council, you could have our cast on board. Come on. Let's move on. Right.
Off the subject, the toilet room is giving us back the toilets, so we've got big decisions to make.
Yeah, I think toilets are more important than flagpoles.
It is, and anyone who can get
Prioritisation.
anyone who can do for another year.
Right.
It's helpful to work on more, but
Right. Suggestion is that we find out what we're talking about. Yeah, we agreed on that. Christine's not to exceed. Right, next item 11, is whether we exclude press and public for the next item of business. That's moved and seconded. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. If anybody is still watching, thank you very much for bearing with us. Apologise for the interruption in the sound. If anybody wants to donate batteries, we'll happily take them.
Double A's on me, please.
Pardon?
I say double A's